People who have been stalked, how did it all begin and what happened? Serious. At the beginning of this past April, an older man moved back in with his parents after he had completed a stint in a rehab facility. That house happened to be 2 doors down from my own. Fast forward to a week later when my roommate hears the doorbell being rung repeatedly as she's getting ready to leave for the day. She opens the door and is greeted by a man whose presence immediately makes her uncomfortable. He claimed that he had hurt his hand and needed a band-aid, but there were no apparent wounds as he held his hands out for her to inspect. She kindly but firmly tells him that she cannot help him, to which he responds by asking if he could measure something in her bedroom. My roommate promptly slams the door shut, and when she leaves 10 minutes later, the man is nowhere to be seen. Fast forward again, at this point about 2 weeks have gone by since the previous incident. I wake up early on a Sunday morning to the sound of the doorbell ringing unceasingly. I get out of bed, walk down the hallway, and peer around the corner only to see the frame of a large man through the clouded glass of our front door. I go into my roommate's room and inform her that the Band-Aid man might be back. She jumps out of bed to confirm, but when she gets to the door, she can't tell for certain if it's him or not. She opens the door slightly, and the man immediately blurts out, "Can I use your bathroom?" She recognizes that it is indeed the Band-Aid man and slams the door shut. We call the police, and by the time an officer arrives, the man has disappeared. We give a thorough report, and the officer brings some photos from the station to see if we can ID the man, but there's no one on file who matches. Unsatisfied but not overly concerned, we end our meeting with the officer by saying we'll contact him if anything else happens. On the following Tuesday morning, something else does happen. Again, I wake up to an unusual sound. This time, though, it's not the chime of a doorbell. Instead, it's the sound of a muffled thumping. My first reaction is to think that it's something innocuous and a little bit absurd. Maybe my roommate is whacking the dust from a carpet. I get out of bed to investigate the source of the sound. As soon as I open my bedroom door and walk down the hallway, it is evident that the sound is something much more sinister than what I had initially imagined. When I get to the corner of the hallway, my fears are realized. The frame of the Band-Aid man is looming through the milky glass, and he's throwing all his weight against the door, banging on it with both fists. I run to wake up my roommate, and she grabs her phone from her nightstand and dials the police. The call to request an officer takes no more than a minute, and by that point, the banging has stopped. We decide to leave her room and walk around the inside of the house to see if we can spot him through a window and snap a picture to show the officer when he arrives. I gingerly step into our den and open the blinds on the window facing our driveway, and then I see him. He's crouched up against her house, hiding. I tell my roommate that he's still here, and she gets back on the phone with the dispatcher while standing in the kitchen. The man leaves his hiding spot and runs back to the front door to resume his pounding. I run into the living room and angle myself against the wall closest to the front door. From where I'm standing, I can hear the man clearly, and I make out through his mumbled rant a single coherent sentence. "I'm going to break down this door." I sprint to the kitchen to tell my roommate so that she can inform the dispatcher that the man intends to enter, and then dash to the back door in the laundry room to make sure it's also locked. When I peek my head around the corner, I have a perfect line of sight to the front door, and from there, I can see the movements of the man more clearly. And I see that he's holding something that he's using all of his strength to bring in contact with the door. It's a hatchet. But then the officer finally arrives and grabs the man from the front door, hatchet and all. Once the man is secured in the back of the squad car, the officer enters to check on us. He informs us that the man was found not only with a hatchet on him, but 2 knives as well, which he had used to slash our tires, 2 of my roommates and 3 of mine. We learned later from the man's statement that he had been waiting outside our house since 3 a.m. that morning. He claimed that he was trying to enter because he wanted a relationship with us. He was infatuated. Thanks to a no-contact order, 2 felony charges, and 2 misdemeanor charges, he's gone from our lives. Oh shoot, my heart is pounding out of my chest with this first one. Story 2. My story is a little more bizarre. I used to work over the summer doing odd jobs and errands for this wealthy old lady. And when she was in charge of some religious conference at her local church, I was enlisted to help out for the day also. She's Catholic and I'm not religious at all, but I smile politely and just agree with whatever people are saying. Towards the end of the day, someone who I think is a young priest starts talking to me about the majesty and holiness of the day, blah, 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 and I'm just like, yes, absolutely, because that is what I've been doing for 10 hours already. He says that he really enjoyed talking to me and asks if we can stay in touch. I was surprised because I thought he was a priest due to his outfit and instantly knew I should say no because he was giving off a really weird vibe. But I had a weak moment and told him that my name was a nickname of my full name that I never use and gave him the email address that I used to sign up for online stuff. Shortly thereafter, this guy, let's call him David, starts to send really long emails about what he's doing with his days and also that I'm just the loveliest woman he's ever known and God brought us together, etc. I replied to only one email one time saying that I have a boyfriend and he would not appreciate me talking with a man who was interested in me. So thank you, but please stop emailing me. And David replies as if nothing happened, does more telling me about things and asks if I want to go on a nature walk. I never respond. David sends another email in a week or two with how it was too bad I couldn't come down, all the fun things that I missed, and that it will be great when I can come next time. Over the next few months, David sends about 6 more emails to me, some long, some short, some talking about how I am the girl of his dreams, others just to say Happy Thanksgiving. I never respond to any of it. I only sent the one email the one time and he just keeps going. Summer had ended and I was back working as an advisor at a boarding school and these emails would come in and I would share them with the kids as a don't you dare ever be this person life lesson and also because I was creeped out and just had to share. So now it's Christmas, I haven't gotten an email in 3 or 4 weeks. Then David sends an email that contains only a JPEG of a picture card that he created. It's a fat, rosy-cheeked Santa holding a bag of gifts with trees and maybe a Rudolph in the background, and the text above says, "You will get your gifts." The font he used was a Halloween something red with blood dripping off the letters. Okay, now I'm freaked the heck out, but I ignore it and never reply. Over the next couple of months, we started to notice a car parked on the street outside of my residence. I shared it with another adult and a group of high school boys. We think it's a neighbor parking on the street or whatever, but what happens next makes me think it is not. Come spring, I start to get mail, actual snail mail with my full name and address from David. He sends a full packet of materials to me with his resume and life story under the guise that he's applying for a position at this program that I work at. It contains handwritten letters of reference, printed evaluations from another job, just a whole bunch of I don't even remember what. I freaked the heck out for real. This is a guy who I had a 5-minute conversation with a year before and sent only one email to that said, "Please don't email me." David has completely ended this story in his mind where we're great friends or soulmates and I am trying to get him a job. He knows where I work and I live, and I highly suspect he was parked and sitting, watching outside my home recently. I bring a large kitchen knife into my bedroom and spend the rest of the night looking up how to handle stalking behavior. The next day, I talk to the police and they confirm my research. A restraining order often entices people to pursue more as they think they can prove their love and devotion by overcoming this obstacle getting in the way of our love. So I am brave and just continue to ignore it. Do nothing, never acknowledge, never respond. Eventually, David loses interest and I stop hearing from him. It's been over 10 years since all this went down, and after that first year, I never heard anything from David again. Story 3. I moved into a gated private community with my parents following my high school graduation. During that time, I took advantage of the many walking trails and smooth pavement through the neighborhood. I had weight to burn, and walking and running was my way of losing it. I was religious about exercising, and after successfully mapping out the mileage, I had a decent 6-mile trek along the winding roads of my community. Now, the community is primarily a retirement community filled with people in middle-aged later years. Old people aren't scary, right? Wrong. During one particularly hot summer day, I walked past the house of a man I had passed many times before and happened to be joined on my walk by him. He seemed nice enough, but in the 0.7-mile walk to the end of the street, he was starting to get rather personal. He asked me if I was in school, what I was studying, the usual questions. Then he asked where I lived. Now, I'm no dummy, and I don't tell strangers where I live, so I just pointed in a general direction and said, "Over there." I would come to regret that action later on. He started to act really funny, giggling like a schoolgirl and smiling at me. I became so creeped out that when I reached the end of the street, I went in the opposite direction to throw him off my trail and away from my home. He went the other direction. I just figured he was a lonely man who was socially awkward. That was until he started to try to join me on my walks and trying to make it look like a coincidence. I started ignoring everything he said to me, didn't look at him, nothing. A few weeks later, after passing his house and blatantly ignoring him, I was reaching the end of the street when I heard a car coming up behind me. When I turned around, I noticed that the driver was steering erratically. The type of driving you do when you are staring at something ahead but not really paying attention to the road. He made a stop at the end of the road, parked in a way that it would block me from passing. I immediately stopped walking and froze, and just then he rolled down the window and said, while pointing in the direction of my house, "Need a ride?" Flabbergasted, I screamed, "No!" and stomped my foot to get my point across with fists clenched. He took off in his car, but in retrospect, it was very likely he had been waiting and ran to his car after I had passed him. I regret not calling the cops, but stupid 19-year-old me just figured he was being nice. After that day, I changed the time, route, and frequency of my daily ritual. I was not about to allow myself to be a victim. However, my attempts proved to be fruitless. After changing up my routine, I was headed down the path by my house when I noticed the man was headed up the path from the opposite direction. I'm pretty sure I was successful in clearing the area before he saw me, and I ran home to tell my dad. Infuriated by the situation, my dad, a 6'2" Vietnam vet, retired cop, told me to get into his truck and he would be taking care of the situation. Once reaching the end of the road, our timing was impeccable. The stalker was crossing the street just in time for my dad to roll down the window, point directly at the man, and mean mug the living crap out of him. And I'm pretty sure that is what the guy did during that moment. Then he floored the accelerator and my dad drove me to a gym where he purchased a family membership. Everything was fine and dandy after that until I returned home this year. 2 years had passed without incident, mainly in part to me living in a different state, and I was out walking my new puppy on a street across the lake out of plain view from where my stalker had lived. I figured I was fine, the puppy was enjoying her walk and I would be home soon. Then I heard that all too familiar sound. Sure enough, when I turned around, that jerk was back at it again. He pulled over and handed me a dog biscuit. Wanting to make my point clear, I threw it into the grass and started walking away. Thankfully, I was rescued by an old lady on a golf cart who wanted to pet the puppy. The stalker sat there a few minutes, realized this wasn't going to work out, then drove off. After that, I realized this was a more serious issue, especially when I went for a random walk one evening with the dog. And after walking up a well-lit path, I noticed his gold Toyota passing back and forth on the road, then finally rested on a spot across the road behind some trees. I decided hell to the no, then sat on a bench near the public pond in an attempt to make the guy wait an uncomfortable period of time. I then planned my escape by running through a few backyards, passing through some woods, and running through my backyard to the walkout basement. He didn't see me. I have since avoided going outside, and I will be relocating to a new state in 2 months. You won't find me there. You're probably wondering why I didn't file a police report. Well, seeming as he is potentially dangerous and out of his mind, I don't want him to gain access to my name or real address. After doing some research based on his address, I learned his name is Richard, quote-unquote for short, and it couldn't be more appropriate. To make matters worse, and something I forgot to mention, was the fact that he had the ability to find me even when I was completely out of view. I do not know how he knew I was out, and the only possible way for him to see me all the way across the lake was by binoculars. Now, I don't know what people get out of doing this to other people. It's just horrible, creepy, and scary. Oh, and since you are already halfway through the video, please do me a favor. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. It seriously helps me out. Story 4. When I was young, I was working over the summer at a Popeyes. I'm a very friendly person and tend to smile and be nice to pretty much everyone. But I learned quickly that some people can take this the wrong way. There was this one older man who came in regularly after work for dinner. I would always smile and greet him like I did all the customers. One day, he tried to give me a tip, but I was legally required to refuse. I didn't think much of it. The next time, he bought 2 desserts and tried to give me one, which I also didn't accept. Then he started holding onto my hand, and then I gave him his change and tried to hug me whenever I wasn't behind the counters. My managers saw nothing of this, but I was starting to get uncomfortable. So I mentioned that he was being weird, and they said he's probably just lonely and to not worry about it. So I didn't. Until he came in one day with a card for me. It was a card to thank me for being his friend with hearts and his phone number in it, asking me to call him. It also contained $10. I showed it to my managers and explained how uncomfortable I was. They told me to get one of them the next time he came in and I could wait in the back until he had left. This is where things escalate. He came in one day, so I got my manager and went in the back. He immediately asked for me, and my manager said I wasn't working. He said he knew he was lying because he had seen me go in the back, so the man left. I came back out front and started to work again. 10 minutes later, the man comes back in and demands to see me. He throws a huge fit and yells and throws stuff until my manager calls the cops. The cops show up and the guy literally runs away to his truck, which is parked suspiciously far away. The cops take down his license plate and tell both me and the manager to call them immediately if we ever see him again. He had been charged with this sort of thing before. The police put a watch at my house and told my manager to always walk me to my car. 2 days later, I got a call from the police. Apparently, this guy had been regularly following me home from work and parking his truck on my street all night. Needless to say, both I and my parents flipped. We knew the police sergeant personally, and he went out to scare the crap out of this guy, telling him he'd be put in jail if he ever come near me again. Luckily, it worked, and the guy stayed away. I bought mace with the $10 he gave me, ended up going to therapy, and quitting that job because of the whole ordeal. Now, I know this is a serious thing, but I gotta laugh at that part where she bought the mace with the $10 he gave her. Amazing. All right, let's just go to the next story. Story 5. It was this random guy that I met at a football game at my university. He started talking to me, and me, being an exceedingly polite person, talked back to him. I didn't think much of it, and he added me on Facebook, and it wasn't too odd for a while. He would comment on all of my pictures and tell me how pretty I was. That was creepy, but it kept getting weirder. He would be sitting outside of my dorm every time I left it, which either meant he figured out my schedule or had no life. It was creepy as hell, and campus police said what he was doing wasn't technically illegal. Then he started following me to classes and work and anywhere I went. He wouldn't talk to me, he would just follow and watch. He ended up getting arrested, but he got released. I wasn't allowed to walk anywhere by myself. One night, I really needed to go to Walmart, and it was pretty late at night. I felt bad for always making my friends go places with me, so I figured a Walmart trip wouldn't be that bad. Of course, he was sitting outside my dorm and followed me to my car. He started talking to me and telling me I was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. He kept telling me I could be his princess if I dated him. He was right in my face telling me all of this, and he kept reaching out and stroking my arms, sides, and hair. Then a friend of mine called me, and I answered it, and creepy stalker guy bolted. He was arrested and got thrown in jail for something less than a month after this happened. Walking at night still freaks me out. Story 6. I met a guy in class when I was in college. I didn't like him at first because he was kind of a tool. He asked me for my number, and I only gave it to him because he was really attractive. He immediately started texting and calling me every day, wanting to hang out. We would frequently do things together, but only as friends. However, he clearly wanted more. He would often ask if I would be his girlfriend. I would respond that I didn't want a relationship. After about a month, he started to become very territorial and creepy. If I didn't answer my phone, he would come find me on campus. I was annoyed when he came by my dorm at 10 p.m. when I didn't answer. But the worst was when he showed up to my private study room I was in on the 3rd floor of the library. I'd never told him I was there. He said, "You should answer when I call." I tried to stop talking to him, but he kept finding me around campus. After a couple of weeks, I finally said to him that I wasn't okay for him to keep coming around. He finally got the hint. I'm so glad I never was his girlfriend. I can only imagine how much creepier he would have been. Alright, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you made it this far, I'm sure you're also going to enjoy. Have you had a creepy feeling about someone that actually came true? Story 3 was insane. I'll see you in that video, and thank you for watching this one.